Okay, today's lesson will be on JavaScript variables. To get started, we're going to open up a terminal window and go to the folder where we're keeping all of our lessons. We have a folder called Full Stack, and inside there I'm going to have a folder called Variables. And I have a program in there called program.js. I will open up my brackets and you can see I have started a file. I'm going to erase that. So we have our program.js file and we have our terminal window. I am going to size this window so that we can see both in the same window today. Need a little bit more here. Okay, now I am going to open up a web browser and I'm going to put it in its own workspace here. And I'm going to go to that. And the first thing we're going to do is go look at some resources that we might use for today's lesson. If we go to Google and we do a search for JSON variables, or excuse me, not JSON, but JavaScript, we can start here at the w3schools.com website, and you can see there's lots of exercises here that you should learn from. Another tool that we're going to use today is JSLint. We're going to use this to make sure our code is typed correctly. Alright, let's begin. When we're talking about JavaScript variables, generally we're talking about we're going to use a keyword var, which is short for variable. It is a keyword in JavaScript, and it's used to define and assign variables. After I type var, I would then have a space. I wouldn't have two spaces, I just have one space. And I need an identifier. An identifier is a unique name. And so the name for this one's going to be x. We're going to have a variable called x, and we're going to assign it the value of 5. And we're also going to go down to the next line and create another variable, and we're going to have its name be y, and we're going to assign it a value of 6. Now, the third thing we'll do is we'll say we'll have a variable z, and it's going to be x plus y. And then just to give us some output, we'll use the console.log, and we'll show what the value of c is. Now we would expect z to be 5 plus 6 or 11. So if I save this file and run this program, we're going to use Node. I'm going to say Node program.js, and you can see it output 11. So my console.log is displaying z. Z was x plus y, y was 6, x was 5, and obviously 5 plus 6 is 11. And so we can also change this to a minus sign, so we can say x minus y, and I'll save that file and run this again, and I've got -1. And indeed, 5 minus 6 is -1. Now, one thing that we always want to do when we're working in JavaScript is we want to make sure that we're typing things correctly, we're writing good code. To find out if we're writing good code, we would want to use JSLint. I'm going to copy my text in here, and I am using Node, and so I'm going to choose this check that box there, and that'll help relieve some errors. And you can see that all is good, all is well. Now let's go make some mistakes, because when you're writing code, generally you're going to make some mistakes. Let's just say we're forgetting about our semicolons. What's interesting about this is that it will work. You'll get the same answer. I erased all my semicolons, I saved this file, I ran the file in Node, I got the same answer. So basically, JavaScript doesn't really care. Node doesn't really care that you didn't put your semicolons in there. In fact, it put them in there for you where it thought they should be. However, that's bad practice. What we need to be, and you can see that when we lint this, when we run this JS lint on here, it's just going to complain about not having, it says expected semicolon instead of saw the next word was variable. So we really do, we want to put the semicolons where they belong. We want to write good code, and good code dictates that we put our semicolons. And so I'm going to put those in and lint this again, and now I'm back to being good. There's other things that we can do when we're trying to write good code. Is we could do something like this. This is another interesting idea. I can do something like this. Now, you might think that wouldn't work. Let's put our semicolons in there. All of this doesn't really matter. I'm just going to have one problem at a time. So now, what the heck is that going to do for us? We got that on a different line. You can see that, again, Node doesn't care. It reads this as being on one line, and it works. Now, even though just because it works doesn't mean that we want our code looking like that. In fact, if we did that, other guys would look at our code and think we were really dumb. So we want to have good, clean code. There's lots of ways you can write this. You don't want to do this. This is another thing. This is just makes it hard to read. Again, it will work. But when we go to lint this, when we go to lint this, you're going to see that that is not going to pass the mustard. Okay, so it expects one space between the x and the equals. So right here, it really, we need to put that so that what this does, it makes it so our code matches. If everybody lints their code, all our code looks the same, and we can all go in and read another person's code, and other people can read our code and not have a problem. So you can see I can lint that, and we're back to square one. Okay, another thing I'm just going to kind of go through a few more ways you can do it wrong and have it work. Let's go up here. We could just put these all in this one line like this. And you'll see that, again, Node just runs it and gets the same answer. Doesn't really care that we put that on the same line. But what we're going to see is that when we lint this, it's going to complain. It's going to say expected var at column 0. You see, it expects the var to be at column 0. It doesn't expect it up here. Now, one thing you can do, and I see often, is this. You can do this. You can just take the var off and put a comma there, and it will work. Hang on a second here. We'll see. Let's go back over here. And we'll watch this. And I do see this quite a little bit. However, the linter is complaining about it. It's saying, well, expected semicolon instead saw a comma. And so, again, I tend not to do it. And so this is the appropriate way. If it passes the muster with JSLint, then it's fine. All right. Another idea to think about here is that let's rephrase this. Y equals 6. And put my semicolon back on there. Variable names don't have to be one letter. They can be as long as you want them to be. So let's just say my variable name is hello. How are you doing today? Now, the problem with this variable name is that it's really pretty long. If it takes a long variable to describe something, that's fine, but variable name should be short and sweet. However, we don't want to abbreviate too much because we want people to look at our variable names and tell what they're for and what they're used for. But if they're too long, then it kind of defeats the purpose. So one thing about this is I defined this variable, and I'm not using it anywhere. I defined x, y, and z, and I'm using them. I'm using x and y in this formula to get z, and I'm using z down here, but I'm never using this. So if we were to run this, it'll work. There's not going to be a problem there. I'm going to get -1. But if I go and if I put this in my linter, it's going to complain. And the reason it's complaining is that I'm not using this. See, this is it's unused. And so if your code is cluttered with variables that you've created but you actually aren't ever using them anywhere for a purpose, those are bad. You should clean them up. So we don't want variables that I'm not using. So let's back up here, and we'll create a shorter variable name. We'll say 1 equals 1. We'll say variable 2 equals 2. Now, I've introduced another idea. Previously, I assigned x equal to 5, and so 5 is an integer, or we call it a number. And now I'm assigning the string 1, and this is a string because it's in quotes, to a variable named 1, and I'm assigning a string 2, and it's a string because it's in quotes, to a variable named 2. Now what's interesting here is, we'll just clean this up a little bit, and we're going to say variable 3 equals 1 plus 2. And then I want to display what 3 is going to be. Now what's interesting is these are strings, and we know 1 plus 2 is 3, but what the heck's going to happen here when I add a string 1 to a string 2? What would we expect to see? Well, let's find out. So basically, it concatenated the two strings together. You can see 1, 2. And basically, it just took one string and added another string to the end of it. And that's called concatenation. Let's go ahead and, oops, excuse me. Let's go ahead and lint this. Make sure we're linting just fine. And I shouldn't have any trouble there. Come on. Okay, so I'm good there. So there's an example of where we can concatenate. When we add two strings, basically we're concatenating them together. And that's very useful. One thing that we can also do is we can actually put a string in here. And better put my plus in there. And we'll come down and run that. And so you can say 1, hello, 2. I just basically put a string in the middle there. Another idea is that it's not a good idea to declare a variable, clear at the bottom of your file. Let's say variable y 1, variable toast equals burnt, like that. Let's just pretend we have some code in here. It's not a good thing to define variables way down in your file. Generally, we want to define our variables at the top of the page. Therefore, we know where they all are defined, and we also a bad thing that can happen is I can write lots of code, and I can come down here and I can reassign 1. Variable 1 equals 6. Okay, so what happens? This variable 1 reassigns the first one. So you can see where we said variable 1 was 1 at the top, and down at the bottom here we said variable 1 is 6. And just you have to imagine a bunch of code in here. It's probably, this is just bad code because you've overwritten a variable that people expect at the top somewhere down in the middle of your code. And so it's just bad news. Now let's go ahead and see what the JSON linter has to say about this. I think you'll find that it will complain. Oops, keep doing that. And so we'll lint this and see what it says. Redefinition of 1 from line 0. So it's warning us, hey, you redefined that. Okay, and now there's a difference between redefining and then just setting a new value. And so let's demonstrate that. We could take this off, the var off, and just say 1 equals 6. There's no problem with this. Basically, we're saying we're instantiating the variable 1, and we're setting it equal to the text 1. We use it with that value coming through here. And then later on, we're just saying, okay, now 1 is 6 now. Now, and then we could say console.log 1. And you can see that the variable 1 is now, will be 6. And we'll run it and see what happens here. And so here's the first one. It's 1, and then it's 6. And you can now go lint that, and we'll see how JSLint. Okay, so we're good there. We're good to go. Okay, a couple other points with this JSLint as I'm thinking about them. Let's try this. Let's say I put a couple spaces in there. See, when you define a variable, that word var needs to be in position column 0. Okay, so we can't. We got to be careful with our spacing. We wouldn't want to tab those over. Okay. Another idea that we'll cover is undefined. Let's go ahead and start over here. If I say variable color equals yellow, for example, what I'm saying is that I have a variable named color and its value is yellow. But what if I don't know what the color is? Let's say there's an instance where I'm trying to model something and I don't know what it is. Then I wouldn't be able to assign it at this point. And so the question is, when I do a console.log, what is the color going to be? What will it return? It certainly couldn't return yellow because I didn't say it was yellow. So the answer is it returns undefined. It's not assigned. Now let's just go to our linter and see see if it gives us any. And basically what the linter is going to say is it's uninitialized. And it's not a good idea to not set something in here. And so really what we want to do is it's almost like you don't want to leave it undefined. You want to say what it is. Now if you don't know what it is, a better thing to do would be say null. Null means I don't know what it is. Undefined means it just wasn't set. And so when I run this, it's going to come up and it'll say null. And null has more meaning than undefined. Undefined means just not there. Null means you don't know what it is. There is no data, and you're expressly stating that. All right, and then now if we lint that again, you'll see that, well, I made a mess of something here. Oops, yeah, I didn't copy it very well. Let's try that. Okay, so now I'm good. Okay, so it's not a good idea to say variable color and do this, or variable x and then just and not assign it. That would be an uninitialized variable. What we want to say is if you don't know what it is, just say null. If you know what it is, put it in there. Go ahead and assign it. Okay. All right, let's talk about strings just for a minute. Strings, we know you have a string when you put quotes around it. So I know that's a string because I have a double quote here and a double quote here. But you can also put a single quote. You can use single quotes or double quotes. Okay, and either way works. Let's just use single quotes first. And you can see it says hello world, didn't get an error. Let's put double quotes in here. Save it up. It doesn't complain about either one. It's fine either way. Okay. So there's a couple questions about this. Let's see what the linter says about it. So here I have double quotes, and it's fine. And I'll put some single quotes in here. Okay, and we'll JS lint it. Linter says it's good. So it's appropriate to use either one. Okay. Now here's an issue that you might come into. Let's say the string that we need. Let's say we're going to decide to use single quotes, and I think that's the most important thing: is decide what you're going to do and do it, and stick with it. I wouldn't do this. That just shows you're kind of confused. If you use single quotes in one expression and double quotes in another, I think it best to use single in both. If you start out using single, just use it. Go for it. Now there comes a problem when, like, I want an apostrophe right here. Let's say I have the need to write a string that has an apostrophe in it. Problem is, this is going to complain. This will not run because it's confused. It thinks this is a string from here to here, and it doesn't know what this is. This S and this apostrophe is out here. So what we got to do is we got to escape the apostrophe, and we escape that with a backslash. And you can even notice that the color changed. This S will change when I escape it correctly. And when I run it now, I've got what I'm looking for. Let's go ahead and display the Y on this in this particular case. So now you can see worlds with the apostrophe S here. Okay, so I had to escape the apostrophe because the apostrophe is being used to denote this as a string. Now, another way I could have done this is just said, all right, I'm going to use double quotes. And then if I just use double quotes all around, I wouldn't have had that issue anyway. Okay, and now this will work just as well. And you can see I've got my apostrophe S there. All right, let's talk about Booleans a little bit here. Boolean values, if X, let's say we have, let's go and clean up and start over. If we say variable married. Married is sort of indicates a true or false notation. So my variable name is married. I'm going to say it's true. I'm married. This is a special value in JavaScript. It's not an uppercase T. It's a lowercase t. Okay, and so let's go ahead and try this. We'll say console.log married. And I'll save that and run that, and so I should just see true here, and I see true. Now, let's just test this theory. Make that a capital T, and see what happens. And what we'll find is it's going to crash, because it doesn't know what true capital TR means. Now, if I were to go here and do this, and put string quotes around it, then all of a sudden this is a, excuse me, then all of a sudden that's a string. That's not a Boolean value. That's just a string, TRUE, capital TRUE. And the same thing would be if I did this. If I just said little t, you know, then it's just a string. But if I take those quotes off with a little with a lowercase t, then this is actually a Boolean value. And very important. Now we can also false is another one. Obviously the other side of true is false, and if I were to save that and run this, then this, you can see there I have false. And and again, it's a little f, not a big F. If we were to put a big F in there, it will not work.